don't you just, first of all, just give me sort of a sense of what we're looking at here.
Okay, this is a big solution pit, a really extraordinary one. And it's got two very rare plants in it. The little green grass that we see out here that's almost covering the surface is a very rare fern relative plant. It's called black-spored quillwort. Isoedes melanospora is the scientific name. And it's federally endangered and also state endangered. And then we have sprinkled around with the quillwort this little plant that's called snorkelwort or little amphianthus, and its scientific name is Amphianthus pusillus. And it's federally threatened. Both of these plants are only found in these solution pits on granite outcrops. The quillwort is only found in Georgia on about 9 different sites at this point. Originally it was known from 14 sites, but some of those have been destroyed. The snorkelwort is known from 50+ different sites. It's barely stretches into Alabama and South Carolina mostly. By and large, it's also known only from Georgia. These plants grow in a very, very harsh environment. They adapted to living in maybe the harshest environment in the southeastern United States. These are, the tops of these granite outcrops are climatically similar to extreme deserts because they get a flash of water seasonally and then they dry out and the surface is extremely hot. So these plants have to create mechanisms for surviving under the harshest of conditions, and I think it's just that they're able to survive under those conditions that allows them to live up here, and nothing else can live here. So these pools up here are fairly shallow. There's just a little, an inch or two of soil in them, and it's mostly just stuff that's weathered off the granite. The quillwort reproduces via spores because, as I said, it's a fern relative. And I guess those spores blow around, and that's how it reproduces, or it spreads, it disperses. The snorkelwort is actually a flowering plant, and you can see some of the little tiny white flowers, both at the center of the plant and out in the middle of these twin leaves at the end of the little stems. And so its tiny seeds are all that it leaves in the pool until the next growing season, the next time that the pool gets wet, which generally is about sometime in winter. The pool, fills up and stays wet, and that flooding condition continues into the spring, and then sometime around May or June, the pools start to really dry up and just get dry completely, right down to the rock underneath the soil.
Do the plants go dormant at that point?
They do. The quillwort has a little, sort of a base, a little corm that remains in the soil, and then the amphianthus, of course, only exists here as seeds until the next season, and then those seeds germinate and we start again.
Now tell me something too. We had talked a little bit about the fact that Georgia, I guess you said, has like 75% of the granite outcroppings of this type. Why don't you talk about that a little bit and sort of impart some of that sort of uniqueness of that?
Okay, but these granite outcrops are granitic outcrops because there are a lot of different kinds of rocks that make up these outcrops. They're mostly or they're entirely within the Piedmont, this kind of rock outcrop. And they stretch from Virginia all the way to Alabama, but really from Virginia through the Carolinas and in Alabama, there are only a smattering of outcrops. 75% of these outcrops occur in Georgia, in our Piedmont. And really the center of them, the center of their abundance is right around here, around Arabia Mountain, and in Rockdale County and Walton County and these counties right in here. It's astounding the variety of outcrops you have too, because they're like islands that rise up in a sea of forest. They each have their own unique plant communities. This community is recurring because it's so simple. I mean, you've only got a few plants that grow here in this pool, but in these other more complex pools where you have quite a few flowering plants and mosses, and when you have larger soil islands with shrubs and trees, you get a really variety of plant communities that occur on these outcrops, and each outcrop seems sort of unique. It has its own character. Certain plants will colonize that outcrop and not really be on another. A lot of it is left up to chance as to what colonizes which outcrop. So since each outcrop has its own sort of unique character and flavor, they're all wonderful and unique places. Mount Arabia is particularly wonderful because it's a complex series of outcrops, both this huge dome here and then a whole series of smaller flat rock exposures that occur in the surrounding forests.
Why don't we, is there anything else you think you want to talk with us about in terms of these two plant species, or because as I said, we can move over to one of the other pools.
Let's go to the deeper soil island.
Hold on one second, Mark. Have you got shots you need here?
Yeah, I'm all set.
Okay. I even see a little purple couple of plants.
Toadflax, yeah. Which is
it's
actually...
I mean, it's just fascinating to me because it's so layered in terms of... I mean,
yeah, there's zones
yeah.
in here, and that's kind of fascinating.
Anytime.
Okay. Malcom, why don't you...
Just wait for that one plane.
Yeah,
This is a virtual lull.
Okay.
Malcom, go ahead and why don't you give me a little explanation of what we're looking at.
Okay, this is sort of
I'm sorry, I want you to start that again because I was kind of stepping on your line, so go ahead.
all right. We've got a sort of a soil island here. It's not really a solution pit because it's got a sort of a step pattern to it. It looks like the prevailing winds have created a little area of soil here, and it's been colonized by a lot of different plants. There's a plant community in here which is dominated by this yellow Senecio tomentosus that's blooming here, and a plant that we don't even see yet, that I can see seedlings of it, but it's not really completely up. It's called Croton wildenowi, and that community's been characterized, and that grouping of plants is itself considered rare because it's got granite outcrop endemics, and they only occur in certain solution pits or soil depositions on these granite outcrops. But there's a lot more going on here than just that one little sort of plant community. We've got a lot of the yellow daisy that everybody loves to see in the fall on granite outcrops, Vigiera porteri. The old skeletons of last year's blossoms are here, and I can see the seedlings all underneath coming up for this year. We've got these wonderful bands of the red diamorpha, the sedum smalli, growing here out in the shallowest soil, and then as the soil gets a little bit deeper, you get this Arenaria uniflora, just a nice thick band of it, and then a little bit of this pine weed growing inside of that, last year's skeletons. A lot of this spiderwort, Tradescania, coming up in here. It's kind of interesting. There's some nice broom sedge, last year's broom sedge coming in. This is a pretty rich little soil island, little herb community, and some of these areas even get colonized by the odd tree and shrub, especially pines. And it's interesting because in a drought year like we had last year, some of these pines that sprout up in these soil islands will just die from lack of moisture, and the harsh conditions on these granite outcrops are constantly controlling what grows here, only allowing certain species to grow or certain species to flourish one year and then try to get another foothold in the following years.
These plants, the Arenaria and the diamorpha, look so delicate, they must be rather hardy.
They're very tough. The diamorpha, this little red sedum here, if you look closely at its leaves, each leaf is a little fleshy knob. So it's a succulent plant. It's storing water in its leaves. And all sorts of desert plants do that same thing, cacti being the classic example. Some of these plants are adapted to sending up their shoots really quickly, flowering and then putting out their seed and then dying back when the conditions get harsh. So they have this strategy of quickly bursting forth and blooming. Others have a strategy of just being really tough and being able to wait it out, and such as the amphianthus and the other plants that we talked about in the solution pit.
Tell me a little bit more about the Diamorpha. I know that it's not a rare plant, but it does seem fairly unique. You don't often see something like that.
Well, Diamorpha is mostly unique to granite outcrops. It does occur on some sandstone outcrops, but people really associate it with granite outcrops. It's got a lot of red pigments in it, which when the plant is not in bloom look like flowers because it's so brilliant. But right now it's in full bloom, so it looks pink on top. All of its little four-petaled blossoms are out. It grows in shallower soils and drier soils in these solution pits than some of the other rare or some of the rarer plants that grow in these outcrops, such as the snorkelwort and the quillwort. So you see a lot more of it, and you see it on outcrops where you don't find the rarer plants. It's much more widespread.
Okay.
Just kind of keep moving your hand over it.
Okay.
Just slowly. Like you're talking about it.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Just go ahead and talk about it. That'll give you.
All right. I guess I'm sort of pollinating these flowers while I'm doing this. This being the rare and dreaded Diamorpha small eye.